The first round of the NFL draft is complete. Did your team get the picks you were expecting? I'm going to go through my full round one analysis and talk about the possible fantasy implications here on the Fantasy First Down. Welcome to the Fantasy First Down. As always, please like and subscribe on YouTube and make sure you check out our Instagram at the Fantasy First Down and our Twitter at Fantasy First Down with no O. It's been an exciting day for me. The mock draft results came out yesterday and then promptly got taken down again, so we'll see what happens with that. But on the initial analysis, I was in the top 5 with my mock draft, which was pretty cool. Always good to see all those expert TV analysts finding out how accurate they actually are. It was a good day yesterday. Enjoyed the draft. I hope all of you did too. I'm excited for the second round. I'm sure a lot of you are watching it right now, but I'm going to go through my round one analysis and then catch up later on. So obviously the quarterback started off exactly as we expected. We knew it was going to go Williams, Daniels, and May. I haven't yet decided what order I'm going to put Williams and Daniels in. For me, they're very close in fantasy. I still want to have a little bit of a think about that. In the short term, it's probably got to be Williams because they put so many weapons around him. And we don't know that Daniels is definitely going to get the starting job over Mariota out of the door. However, in Dynasty, Jaden Daniels, such a good running quarterback. So I really understand why Washington went with Daniels. I think it was the perfect pick, given that they didn't have Williams available. But in Dynasty especially, I feel like Daniels is going to be fantastic for a good 5 or 10 years, but Williams has that real upside to be a career quarterback. He doesn't have the same amount of wear and tear on his body because of that. I think he could be very good. I like both of those guys. They're going to be excellent for fantasy. No matter what league you're in, you should definitely be taking one of those two guys early, especially in Superflex. Drake May, again, the right pick. They did the right thing, but they're still rebuilding, and Drake May is definitely a project. I don't expect Drake May to start straight out of the gate. I expect it will be Jacoby Brissett. They need to build around May, and they need to fix a lot of fundamentals with him. He's got massive upside. He's got questionably Josh Allen maybe upside without quite the same run game. But he's that sort of big build guy with a strong arm, but they need to improve a little bit on what's going on there before they can actually put him into the NFL. Michael Penix is a weird choice, and I'm sure all of you who are watching were as surprised as I was. I don't understand what Atlanta was doing. This is what happens when the owner comes in and tries to make decisions over the top of the coaches. Same thing as last year when Young went to Carolina. Just a situation of Arthur Blank, just do your job. Your job is to own the team, not to make the decisions. I don't get it at all. Also not great that they're paying Kirk Cousins a whole lot of money, and now they've got a young quarterback coming in, but he's already 24 with 6 years of experience. What are they doing? I don't understand at all. It doesn't make any sense to me. You basically have a couple of years of this rookie contract that you can't take advantage of because instead you've given an older player a whole lot of money. So this makes no sense. They need to work on their defense. They didn't. I really hope they hit that hard in day 2 and onwards. JJ McCarthy, very smart work by the Vikings. The Vikings hanging back, felt they didn't need to trade up to get their guy, and they were spot on. I was very impressed by their choice to do that. Stuffed up my mock draft a little bit, although I did ultimately move him down into the 5 spot. I was pretty confident he wasn't going to the Cardinals after a few things that happened. So I had Harrison in with the Cardinals in the end. If you want to check out my final mock, of course, you can also check it out on Instagram, where it's still up there for prosperity so that you can remember the mistakes that I made and the good things that were in there as well. I don't think McCarthy starts straight out the gate. I think he's close to being able to start, but I think they probably give Sam Darnold the start. And then when they start to lose some games, they'll probably put McCarthy in there. Or alternatively, when they just feel like McCarthy is at that point when he's ready. This is a real dent in the chances of Justin Jefferson, the other JJ, being good in fantasy this year. He drops for me below a lot of those other top guys. I just don't think McCarthy is a guy who can really harness his upside to the same extent that quite a few of the other guys can. At 12, the Broncos select Bo Nix. I mean, this is clearly a mistake. They had a couple of other options. They could have gone up to get McCarthy a little bit, and realistically, they only need to move up a couple of picks. I would assume that the Vikings knew they would have possibly traded up with the Jets. That's the Broncos would have possibly traded up with the Jets, and so that they made the change and instead went up themselves. But the Broncos could easily have moved up past another couple of teams. We know Chicago wanted to trade down. We know the Jets wanted to trade down. So the Broncos should have done the work and gotten JJ McCarthy. There were reports that suggested they liked him. He's so far ahead of Bo Nix in upside. Bo Nix is 3 years older. He's got a lot more experience, but his upside is capped. We know what Bo Nix is. JJ McCarthy ultimately has only played for a few years. He's been very successful. He's a bit of a system quarterback, but realistically, that's what the Broncos need. I just don't get the Nix pick at all. It's a mistake. They could have waited a good round and picked him later on. I don't know what happens in week one. I don't know whether it's Nix or Stidham or Wilson. Realistically, it wouldn't surprise me if it's Nix given how little competition there is there. I know that going into this, they said Stidham was their guy and they were comfortable with him. No one buys that. We know that it's Jarrett Stidham. He's fine. He's average, but he's a backup. And Zach Wilson, I mean, he's not the guy, but at least he's got upside. Former number 2 pick. You've got to recognize that at least something good might happen there. Now, we will expect some more quarterbacks to come. I expect Spencer Rattler will come sometime today. I don't know exactly when, but he's a second or third round guy, probably third round to me. Michael Pratt, I think, is probably more of a day 3 guy. Same with Joe Milson. He's got a big arm, but Gossie's very, very raw. I will also, of course, see some running backs coming off. Nothing to talk about with running backs yet, but we'll see some running backs come off the board probably mid to late second round and into the third round. It's entirely possible we don't see a running back at all until the third round. This is a really weak running back class. But Trey Benson and Jonathan Brooks have been rising, and for that reason, it wouldn't surprise me if a team goes up to take one of the top guys. There's reasonable depth in this class. There are quite a lot of good day 3 running backs that can come in and do a job. There's just not those starters that are going to be total studs for you. And realistically, we know the NFL is reducing the value they give running backs. I don't believe running backs have the value they have in the past. So it kind of makes sense that they'd fall either way. Now, let's talk about the wide receivers. Sorry, these graphics are a bit blurry for you on your screen. I'm trying something a little bit different. So let me know if you have any thoughts on those as well. So Marvin Harrison went with the 4th pick. This was always going to be the best option. There was a lot of talk about Malik Neighbors being preferred by the Cardinals. Of course, Mike Jurecki came out with a report. He's very, very accurate with the Cardinals. This is the first time I've really seen him get something wrong in years. So a bit surprising that he had the report that said they preferred Neighbors, but obviously they ended up making the correct choice and going with Marvin Harrison, who is just the cleaner prospect. I know there were some question marks about choosing not to work out and things like that, but realistically, his tape does show everything that teams need. The fact that he still went the 4th pick and didn't really do much at the Combine or his pro day might actually have a bit of a drop-down effect on how the players coming out of college view the role of the Combine and the pro day. It wouldn't surprise me if the top players just go, you've seen everything you need to see. I'm not going to get myself injured. And teams might appreciate the fact that their top players aren't getting themselves injured before they go to pick them. I like Harrison for fantasy. I feel like this is a really good landing spot for him. I feel like he's going to be the clear number 1 guy, and Kyler Murray knows how to throw the ball. This probably hurts Trey McBride a little bit, but we know they were going to bring in someone. You can't go in with just Trey McBride and those other guys, especially with Marquise Brown out now. So it hurts McBride slightly, but it mainly just helps Harrison. This is a great landing spot for him. Likewise, Malik Neighbors to the Giants. Great pick, exactly what they should have done. A really good landing spot for Neighbors. They don't have Barkley anymore. It looks like Waller might retire. So this is going to be him getting all the targets he could possibly desire. In fact, it wouldn't surprise me if the Giants add another wide receiver, even on day 2 or possibly day 3, because their depth chart just looks a little bit bare. Wan'Dale Robinson's got some upside as that small slot guy. Obviously, you've got Slayton, and Jalen Hyatt's a guy that's got upside. But again, there's a reason he slipped into the 3rd round. So Neighbors is the guy that I definitely prefer in this situation. We'll have to wait and see exactly what happens around Daniel Jones, whether they pick up a Spencer Rattler later on or something like this. But I think realistically, they are actually comfortable with Jones moving forward, at least for 1 more year while they've got him on that big contract. That means that he will be using Neighbors a lot. I would also expect that we might see a running back from them later on. That wouldn't surprise me. And if they get a tight end, I wouldn't be shocked either. They need to work on a lot of different things, but they need to put some weapons around Daniel Jones to give him the best chance of succeeding moving forward. I love Neighbours for fantasy this year. I love him nearly much as Harrison this year, but a little bit behind that in Dynasty. He's explosive. He can take the ball and score from any play. They've got to find ways to scheme him up and get him going, because he's going to be fantastic. It would not shock me at all if he finishes as a top 12 fantasy receiver this year. He's going to need to find a way to get some touchdowns, though. If their offense kind of stinks, he's going to get a lot of volume and be good in PPR, but he's going to struggle to score. So your scoring setting is going to make a big difference there as well. Now, Rome Odunze, this is the perfect range for him. 8th or 9th pick is where I expected he'd go. I don't love the fit here. It's fantastic for Caleb Williams. It's great that they're giving him the players around him to help him succeed. But for fantasy, for Rome himself, this is really bad, because he's got Moore and Allen taking away all those targets. You've got Cole Kmet, you've got Swift in the run game and the passing game as well. There's so many options. The Bears are going to look good this year, and I think that's fantastic. But realistically, this hurts him for fantasy. Long term, it's still okay. He is a very, very good player, great contested catch player. I think he's going to be good in the red zone. I expect that he's going to be a very good pro moving forward. He's better than most of the prospects we've seen coming out the last few years. The fact that he's behind Harrison and Neighbours doesn't mean that you should discount how good Odunze is. But he's going to have to wait a year or two before he really becomes the guy in Chicago. I think this year he's going to be a little bit of a sleeper who might be good if they get injuries. But I think that in Dynasty, you still definitely have to draft him. Probably is the third option off the board. I think it's going to go those 3 wide receivers, except in Superflex. Now, Brian Thomas to the Jags. There was a little bit of talk about the Jags possibly taking a receiver. I don't really understand it. They have 3 totally feasible options already. I don't love the idea, and I don't love the fit. I understand you want to give Trevor Lawrence all the opportunities he can to succeed, but you've already got Christian Kirk. You've already got Gabe Davis. You've already got Zay Jones. They're all reliable starting options. And you've got Evan Ingram and Etienne as well. There's so many weapons there. There's other things they needed to cover for. I would have gone with cornerback. There were still cornerbacks on the board at this stage. Mitchell had just gone. Look, it's possible that they were expecting they might be able to get Mitchell, but go get Terry and Arnold. Go get even Wiggins, or Cooper DeJean's not really a scheme fit, but one of the cornerbacks that's available, or drop down and get Kool-Aid McKinstry. I don't understand what's going on. I can only assume that they're just not comfortable with one of their wide receivers in there. And I don't know which one. Zay Jones has had some injury issues, admittedly. Gabe Davis, they just paid quite a lot of money for. So this doesn't make sense to me. I don't understand what they're doing. And this is bad for Brian Thomas's dynasty chances as well, because a lot of those other guys aren't going anywhere. And Thomas is a risky prospect. He does have some drop issues. He's got some character issues. So it's not surprising that he fell to this spot. But it is a little bit surprising that the Jaguars took him. Xavier Worthy, this was a weird trade, and I think we can all agree that. Having said that, I think the Bills are smart enough to recognize that Worthy was the next wide receiver on the board, and he's not really what they need. He's not that alpha guy. He's kind of that speed option, and he does have a lot of speed. So I think this is the right range for him, and I think it made sense that the Bills would want to trade out. I know it seemed weird at the time, but I feel like that they know the guys that they want to get. I just thought it was a little bit risky dropping back behind San Fran and also letting Carolina jump up. Now, obviously, they didn't feel that way, given they were happy to move back with Carolina, but I thought it was a really weird choice. I feel like Thomas would have been the right fit for them. He is that guy who has the potential to be an alpha, so I'm very surprised that they didn't move up with one of those other teams that are in those early 20s or even in the late teens to go and get Thomas. They just must not have had him that high on their board. Kind of like the fit for Worthy. Realistically, we've seen what Tyreek Hill can do in this situation with Patrick Mahomes. Xavier Worthy is not Tyreek Hill. He's quite a bit bigger, but he is quick. He's a good route runner. Sorry, my Australian came out for a second. He's a good route runner. Realistically, it's hard to know exactly how he fits in because we don't know what's happening with Rashee Rice. Also don't know exactly how Marquise Brown fits in, but they've definitely got some speed there. It's great to see the Chiefs finally getting a wide receiver in the first round. Possibly they could have waited back and gotten one in the second round and gone O-line here, but I understand it. I understand the fit. I understand them trading up. I think this is reasonable. I think it's totally fine. Ricky Pearsall, I don't think any of us really saw him in the first round. I saw him mocked as high as 34 by, I can't remember if it was Charlie or Walt on Walter Football, but look, this was a little bit earlier than expected for him. Pearsall's a really good player. And this pick does seem to signal that Samuel and Ayuk are very much on the trade block. Which of them goes and whether they go, we don't know. I think there's a lot less value there for them than most think, given the massive wide receiver contracts that have been happening. I think mostly teams recognize that these players look good because of the 49ers system. And realistically, they don't deserve to be paid the big money that they think they deserve to be paid. So I think it's going to be hard to trade those guys. It's entirely possible they go with all three guys this year. The best teams generally think a year or two ahead, and it's possible they just keep Pearsall in there, give him a year to sit behind those guys and be that third guy. Now, the problem is I'm not sure that he's the greatest blocking wide receiver, and Juwan Jennings does a lot of blocking work. So if they don't move Samuel or Ayuk, I don't like Pearsall at all for Dynasty or indeed for Fantasy this year. I feel like he has the potential to be good longer term. He is ultimately a first-round pick, but he's the worst of these guys. And I think probably in Dynasty, he'll fall behind a couple of other guys that will go early in the second round. I'm thinking the McConkeys. I'm thinking the Keon Coleman, for example. I think if they go to good teams, for example, the Bills, they're going to end up ahead of Pearsall as well in both Dynasty and redraft fantasy as well. Now, Xavier Legette made it into the first round. I'm so excited. I had him mocked to the 32nd pick quite a while back, and I kind of got talked out of it by quite a few people who were saying that he's not a first-round prospect. I love Legette. He's such a good player. I don't like the fit, though. I know that the Panthers love him, and it's great that they love him, but realistically, their offense is a mess. This team is a mess. Their owner needs to go. I don't like the fit. It's going to really hurt his potential to be a high upside guy. We haven't really seen receivers have a lot of success with Carolina. We've seen DJ Moore go well, but I just don't love it. I was really hoping he'd go somewhere like the Chiefs so that he could kind of be that big guy that takes over from Travis Kelce, or the Bills or something like that. So I was disappointed to see the fit, but I was really excited to see him go in the first round. He and Deontay Johnson will likely be the main guys. Adam Thielen surely getting phased out now, and I just don't think they got what they wanted out of Mingo, which is disappointing because I've got a couple of Mingos around my Dynasty team, but Legette's going to be a guy that I'm going to target, I think, even though the fit really does hurt him and he's going to drop a little bit lower than expected. I do love the fact that he's been picked this early when so many people had him outside the top 10 of their big boards and their rankings and things like that. The NFL knows what they're talking about. This guy is good. He's not as big as you think he is. He plays really big, so I expect that he's going to be good for the NFL. I expect that we'll get some early wide receivers. In fact, I don't have the draft on right now. I can't see it from where I am, but I would be shocked if we haven't already seen some by now. I think guys like McConkey and Coleman could go early. Adonai Mitchell is a very good player, but there's a lot of character concerns. Teams are worried about whether he can manage his type 1 diabetes. So I'll have to wait and see, but I feel like Mitchell could be a guy I have quite high given his upside. Troy Franklin will go early as well, and we'll see a lot of those other guys go late in the second round or into the third round. Now, Brock Bowers is the only tight end. We knew that was going to happen. We probably won't see another one until the third round, potentially. This is a weird choice, though. I think possibly the Raiders were expecting they were going to get Penix, and then when it didn't happen, they kind of had to scramble a little bit. I think they probably could have had other picks here. Fawanga was available. They possibly could have gone and gotten Fashanu if they'd really tried, although I don't think they really expected the Jets would take him there. And moving up 2 spots for him didn't make sense when they've already got Colton Miller at left tackle. So they could afford to get one of the many right tackle options. I am shocked they went with Bowers here. I don't think it really makes sense. It's fantastic value. There's no arguing that the value of Bowers here is really good. He does not deserve to fall this far. He should be a top 10 option. Also a bit shocked the Jets didn't go him. Obviously, they went O-line, and all the reports coming out, Charlie Campbell always nails the Jets every single year. And he said that their plan A was to trade down, which they did 1 spot, but I think they would have preferred to go further. Their plan B was to take Adunze if he was there, which obviously he wasn't. And their plan C was to take Brock Bowers. They've gone randomly to plan D, which is to take O-line. Don't understand what they're doing. I can only assume they were worried about a team jumping over them, but who's going to jump over them? There were no real O-line needy teams unless they thought someone was going to trade with the Falcons, but they were off the clock by then. It just didn't make any sense to me why they did that. If that was their plan, I can only assume they were just sending out smoke, or that they made a last-minute change because they didn't expect their guy to be there. Bowers, I mean, it's an okay fit for the Raiders. I understand what they're doing. They needed a slot guy. Hunter Renfrow is not him. I also don't love Jacoby Myers either. So they've really just got Devontae Adams. But go get a wide receiver. There's so many good wide receivers here. You've already got Michael Mayer. I like Mayer. He's not fantastic, but he's fine. He's a good player. I mean, compared to Bowers, he's not very good, but compared to most other tight ends that have been coming out the last few years, he's one of the best prospects we've had coming out. Sam Laporta obviously boomed last year. Dalton Kincaid looks really good, but Mayer's a good player in his own right. If he hadn't had so many other good tight ends coming out, I think that Mayer would be somebody that we'd be thinking of really highly. So I don't understand what they're doing here. I really hope they're going to play a lot of two tight end sets because I do like Mayer, but realistically, if you've got Michael Mayer in Dynasty, and a lot of you probably do because he was going pretty early last year, you have to consider dropping him. Realistically, if you're in a bit of a shallow league and he's your third tight end, he's probably a guy that you can consider dropping unless you have something like tight end premium or something like that where tight ends have more value. I just don't see a situation where he's going to be a top 20 or maybe even a top 30 tight end. It's just Bowers is a receiving tight end. The only hope is that they do a Kincaid-Knox situation where they're both on the field quite often. And while Bowers is doing a lot of the receiving work and May is a little bit more in line, they're still giving him some receiving work as well. And he's the guy that's out there while they're mostly expecting to run. But you'll occasionally throw out of run situations as well when you're audible. So I can see a situation where it makes sense. I don't love it. It's disappointing because Brock Bowers is a guy that I thought was going to be really high on my board for Dynasty this year. I can't have him this high now. I still think the upside's there, but he's no longer a top 10 option in redraft fantasy, and he's no longer the fourth guy off the board for me, I suspect. Now, let's talk about the defense a little bit. I'll talk about IDP a little bit, but this is mostly team fits. Byron Murphy, great value at 16. I understand the Seahawks doing this. There was always a possibility they'd do this. I thought they'd go O-line, but with Murphy there, they couldn't say no. They need to beef up that D-line on the interior. That's always been a strength for them. He'll play alongside Leonard Williams, and they'll bring Jones in occasionally. They also got Jaron Reed. They're actually really strong and with really good depth here, but they couldn't give up on Murphy. Because of that fit and because of the other players around there, I'm a little bit worried about whether they're going to have him out there every down on running plays. He's not very tall, but he is at least strong. I kind of compare him a bit to Kalijah Cansey in that he's an interior rusher, but he's not really an every down guy. But he's heavier than Cansey. Same height, but a lot chunkier. And I think he's also just got better rush moves as well. I think he's a really good player, and I think he's clearly the top tackle option coming off the board. I like the fit. It makes perfect sense. The other defensive tackle, of course, was Darius Robinson. This is a good fit for Robinson as well. I understand what the Cardinals are doing here. We knew they were expecting him. This is one Mike Jurecki definitely got right. I had this mocked at 27 in my mock, so I was very happy when it turned out this way. They've got kind of three rotational guys that can go on their version of an edge. Obviously, they're running a 3-4. So we're talking about a nose tackle in between and then two of these guys. I know our lads has Nichols as the nose tackle. I expect that'll probably be Tonga, and they'll rotate these guys through. But I think it will depend on the situation. Love this fit. Robinson can rush from the edge potentially, but he is more of an interior guy. So I think this kind of makes sense. I like the fit here. I like what they're doing. I think it was the perfect option for this pick. They could have gone for a cornerback as well. Someone like Nate Wiggins was falling, obviously, but Robinson makes sense. I like what they're doing. With the edge guys, I did not expect these guys to fall so far. They kind of all ended up in a bit of a bundle where they're going every second pick. So this is great value for Laiatu Latu. A lot of the media are a little bit behind and didn't get the reports that he's been cleared by most teams. So this is a fantastic value pick by the Colts. Smart drafting. I know they had bigger needs. They will talk about them going up and getting a Dunze. I expected them to pick him at 9 and trade with the Bears, who I thought would come down and get Murphy. Both of those players went in that range, but it wasn't the Colts who were involved. They get a great value pick here in Latu. I like this pick. It makes sense. And I also love this pick, strangely enough, for Michael Pittman. I know that doesn't really make sense, but I thought they were going to take some sort of receiver or Brock Bowers. And they realistically easily could have, but they chose to go defense. That suggests to me that they see Michael Pittman as their guy. So this is really good news for Michael Pittman. He's going to be high up for me. He's going to be approaching my top 12 in Dynasty and even in redraft potentially, because he's going to get so much volume. We'll see what happens in the second or third round, but I don't see a guy out there that could realistically challenge him for that top guy in Indianapolis. Now, Dallas Turner, obviously he fell a little bit. There are a few concerns around character and injuries, just minor ones. So it makes sense that he fell into this range. I think this is the range that we expected him to go in heading into draft night. Obviously, the weeks before, I had him in the 8th spot to the Falcons. That was primarily a need pick, and because Latu had those injury concerns, as soon as Latu was cleared, I moved Latu into that spot instead. Turner to Minnesota is a really good pick. Minnesota's always had a really good edge rush, but they've lost a lot of their guys now. They've lost Zadarius Smith. They no longer have Davenport. They've brought in Grenard, who's a good player. They've brought in Van Ginkel, who's a good player. They can rotate those guys with Dallas Turner. This makes perfect sense. Dallas Turner is a high upside guy. I like what they're doing here. There are concerns, but this is the range. I had him going at 19, so 17 makes perfect sense. I like this fit. Now, I also like the fit for the Rams. They needed to do something with their rush. I think they would have preferred to get Murphy, and I'm a little bit surprised they didn't jump up to get him. I actually had a mock at one point where I had them trading with the Seahawks to go up and get their guy. So I think it would have been nice to see them jump up. But Jared First is a good option. Solid run defender, good edge rusher, good motor. He's a very clean prospect compared to the guys like Turner and Chop Robinson. You don't need to project very much. I think he'll be a good foil for Young on the other side. They are going to miss that interior rush, and I do hope that they pick someone up in the second round. Now, Chop Robinson, I mean, this is an upside guy. He doesn't have a lot of sack production, but gosh, he's got an explosive first step. He is so quick off the mark. So this is teams projecting. I think there's a lot of risk in projecting here with Robinson. I think this is a bit early for him, but I understand what the Dolphins are doing. This is the right range for them. I did hope that they'd go with Johnny Newton. I think it would have been better to go with the interior and replace Christian Wilkins. They do have some edge guys. They've got Phillips. They've got Chubb. They've also got Shaq Barrett as well. There's a lot of quality there, but there's a lot of injury issues. And Barrett is old, not compared to me, obviously, but compared to the NFL. Especially in this position. So I understand what they're doing with Robinson. They want a lot of guys that they can rotate through. This is a fine pick. It's not a great pick, but it's fine. Now let's talk about the other guys we should expect coming up with them. With the tight ends, I personally prefer Jatavian Sanders, but I do know that Theo Johnson and Ben Sinnott are considered more likely to go first. Cade Stover's an okay option there. Jaheim Bell is a guy who'll go a bit later on, but I like the upside there. Sanders is my favorite of these guys, but they're all fine. They'll probably be backups or at least be drafted into backup situations. I don't expect many of these other guys to start at tight end this year. So not very exciting fantasy options. D-line, though, there's a whole lot of good-looking guys there. Johnny Newton's fantastic value here. Braden Fisk will go at some stage in the second round. Chris Jenkins is a good big run stopper. You got Braswell coming off the edge. You got Nealand, who is a bit of a riser during the draft process. Braylon Trice has been falling through the draft process, but he's still a good player. Michael Hall as well has some major character concerns, but realistically, he's one of the more talented players, probably the second most talented interior guy. So wouldn't surprise me if a team takes a gamble on him. So when I transfer this across from where I make the graphics, they mess around a little bit. So sorry if that's a little bit unclear. Finally, we've got the cornerbacks, and I'll talk briefly about the O-linemen, but it's not very interesting for fantasy. So cornerbacks, I mean, they fell. That's the biggest takeaway. I had Quinion Mitchell to the Eagles, but I had them trading up to get him. There was a lot of news that they might trade up to get him, so I had the Broncos coming down, which they should have done, and the Eagles going up, which it turns out they shouldn't have done. This is an incredible pick. This is possibly the best value pick of the draft. This is a guy who they could realistically have taken on the edge of the top 10, like that 11 and 12 range. And I think most people would have said, yeah, that's fine. That's okay. And they got him at 22. That is excellent. They needed another cornerback. Slay and Bradbury are aging and not looking like the players they used to be. They've been some very good players over the years, but they're not anymore. They needed to replace ideally both of them, but they've at least gone and gotten one. And I can see what they've got in Ricks and Ringo, and see if those guys can come through. They've also got Maddox in the slot, but that's not really relevant to that part of the depth chart. Terry and Arnold, I mean, this is a great pick by the Lions. The trade up made sense, given that they needed to make sure that he didn't fall any further. They had to make sure they get him because he wasn't going to fall much further. This is a great value pick. There were a couple of concerns with Arnold when the Alabama guys were asked about Kool-Aid McKinstry, thinking that he might have some character issues. They instead said, actually, Terry and Arnold, just the guy's a little bit immature and not quite ready for the NFL. So I think that may have led in part to his fall. That and the fact that cornerbacks just in general were falling because the teams clearly don't rate this class as much as some of us do. I don't really know exactly where he fits. They've got Carlton Davis in there now. They've obviously got Brian Branch in that slot role, but he can cycle around as well. So, I mean, Arnold makes sense. He fits in there. I like what they're doing. He's possibly the right sort of character guy, but I'm a little bit surprised he doesn't quite fit that mold they usually go with. But, I mean, he's a great player, so I understand what they're doing. Now, the Ravens, I mean, cornerback made sense, but I'm a little bit surprised they went with Nate Wiggins. I'm a little bit disappointed as well. I had him falling out of the first round. I had Cooper DeJean and Kool-Aid McKinstry going ahead of him, and that was wrong. There are some concerns about Wiggins' size. He's very skinny. He's not a good run defender. That's a little bit of an issue, but gosh, can he move? He's very, very quick. So I understand what the Ravens are doing. It is a need. They need to beef up the secondary. He can play across from Humphrey, and they're going to be good. Kind of disappointed they didn't go Cooper DeJean. I think that would have made a little bit more sense here, but Wiggins is fine. This is the right range for him. I know this is exactly where Walt had him going, so I feel like it makes sense that he would go in this range. The other cornerbacks coming off the board as well, of course, Cooper DeJean and Kool-Aid McKinstry need to go early. Ennis Rakestraw is a guy I thought might even slip into the first round, but all the cornerbacks fell, and expect to see Mike Sainristil at some stage on day 2 as well. With the O-line, I mean, there's some good O-line players in this class. It's very top-heavy, but there's some good players. Joe Alt and JC Latham, both fantastic players, but they're the wrong way around. There's fits in that order. Joe Alt is a left tackle who is going to need to play right tackle, and JC Latham is a right tackle who's probably going to need to play left tackle. It's very bizarre. Realistically, those teams should have just swapped. Now, I know that Alt is definitively the better player. He is clearly the better player. He deserved to be the first O-lineman off the board, but it doesn't really fit a need for the Chargers. I understand they want to replace Trey Pipkins, but I don't know that Joe Alt really makes sense at right tackle. He hasn't played right tackle. I know a left tackle should be able to play right tackle, and that's not as egregious as getting JC Latham in to try to play left tackle. But I don't know. I think it's fine. I'm interested by all those rumors that said that the Chargers might actually like Latham. I wonder if that was them just trying to give themselves the option to trade back and hope that they can then jump up back over the Titans. Not really sure what that was all about. That was all a little bit weird. The Jets taking Fashanu, didn't like it, hoping they'd take Brock Bowers instead or trade back and get a wide receiver like we thought they would. But they took Fashanu. It's good for the long term, but their win window is literally right now. They only have Aaron Rodgers for another year, maybe 2. Their tackles are old, but they don't need to play for the next decade. They just need to play this year. So I don't understand this pick. It's kind of going against what they need to be doing. So not a big fan. It's fine. But, I mean, it clearly fills a need. If they'd gone something wacky like cornerback, then you would hate this pick. So at least they've gone for a need. But, gosh, if they'd gone receiver or tight end, that would have been fantastic. You just got to hope that they pick up a receiver later on in the second round. Fuanga here to the Saints. This is a good value pick. It's not what I would have liked to have seen. I think they need to replace Trevor Penning on the left. I don't know that Fuanga is really that guy, but there's big concerns over Ramczyk as well. So whether Fuanga plays left or right, I'm not sure. There are some teams that see him as a possible left tackle. I think he's more of a right tackle or an interior guy. So don't love the fit, but he's clearly the best player available on the board. I think they would have preferred to get Fashanu if he was available, but obviously the Jets have taken him away. If they really wanted him, they easily could have traded up with the Jets. We know the Jets wanted to trade down. So they get Fuanga. They're a little bit lucky, I think, that he fell there as well because the Raiders could have taken him. If I were the Saints there, I probably would have jumped up with the Broncos to try to make sure I could get my guy, but they clearly seemed to believe that he was going to make it down. And possibly there was another tackle they liked on the board as well. Amarius Mims to the Bengals. Shout out to Walt. He nailed this pick. And I listened to him, so I got this one in my mock as well. I mean, this is a good fit. Mims is a very high upside guy. I understand what they're doing here. They need a tackle. They need to protect Joe Burrow. This is a good pick. I look forward to seeing how he is going to go. He's an upside guy, has some maturing to do, has some skills to learn, but I feel like he's going to be good in that system. Troy Fautanu to the Steelers. I thought this was going to be Graham Barton. I think it probably should have been Graham Barton, but they've gone Fautanu here. I think that's fine. I feel like this is a reasonably good fit for them. I don't know that Fautanu is a great center. He's more of a guard, and he can actually play as tackle as well. A lot of people had him as tackle in their rankings. I think guard makes more sense for him, which is why he fell. There are a lot of people projecting him quite high. A lot of people linking him to the Seahawks because obviously he's comes from Washington, and the Seahawks OC, Darren Grubb, comes from the Seahawks as well. But he fell for a reason. I think this could arguably be a little bit early for him, but I do understand what the Steelers are doing here. This makes sense. This is a good pick. I don't hate this value at all. So happy with where he's gone there. I forgot to include Graham Barton. I don't know how that's happened. I think it's because he got listed as center and I was searching by position. Graham Barton was exactly in the range we expected him to be in as well. So nothing particularly shocking about that. I don't love Graham Barton. I personally prefer Jackson Powers Johnson, but he's fine. They're much of a muchness for me. I think Barton could have been taken later, and I would have been happier with it, but he was in the right range, so that was fine as well. Jordan Morgan to the Packers is a real shock for me. I think Tyler Guyton would have been a better fit. I think this is a little bit early for Morgan. We did hear that possibly the Cardinals would take Morgan at 23 if they had that pick. In fact, it wouldn't have surprised me if they took him at 27 if they had that pick, but instead they went for Morgan. I'm fine with that. That's in the right range there. You can't argue too much with this. We expected him to go late in the first round, and he did. I feel like with Guyton on the board, that would have been a better direction to go. I would love to have seen them take Cooper DeJean. They need a safety, and they need cornerback help. He could be both. He's a good scheme fit for them. But, I mean, this is fine. Tyler Guyton to the Cowboys. I had this one mocked, obviously, at 24, not at 29. Great fit. Exactly what they needed. They need to beef up that O-line. I would expect that they'll get more O-linemen as the draft goes on as well. We will see quite a few more O-linemen coming. Powers Johnson is probably gone by now, I suspect. I obviously can't see the draft from where I am, but I think he has. Sua Matai is a guy I thought might go to the Chiefs. I expect he goes early on day 2. And then there's a bit of a drop-off after those guys. In fact, Sua Matai is a guy who could fall as well. He's the next kind of clear tackle prospect. He and Patrick Paul, but there is a big gap between Guyton and those guys. So I think it kind of makes sense that that they fall a little bit out of the first round. Obviously, Zach Frazier is the center option. He'll go late second round. We will expect to see some linebackers coming off soon as well. Edgerrin Cooper, Junior Colson, the main guys. I like Peyton Wilson as well, but there's injury concerns. Cedric Gray is a guy that I really liked at North Carolina, but realistically, he has fallen a little bit because his play fell off a little bit last year. With the kickers, obviously for fantasy, we care about that. Not many clear starting kickers here. I think Reichard and Cardi are probably the main guys who'll go. We'll probably see Little, Dalmas maybe a little bit. Maybe Harrison Mevis is possible, I guess, but I don't know. I think Reichard is the main guy. Cardi, you might see him, but this is all about fit and what's going on there. Obviously, with the punters, Aussie Tory Taylor is in there. He was in the paper the other day. Hayball as well, Austin Dort, and also Ray Cow, guys we might see, but I mean, they're punters. I mean, if kickers are people too, punters are kind of nearly people as well. And I didn't even mention the long snappers because I ran out of space, and frankly, who cares? So that's been the first round. What was the most surprising pick for you? What were you expecting? Make sure you let me know what you're thinking. I will be back at some stage to talk about the second round, probably tomorrow, though it will probably be after the third round's actually happened, because the third round happens at 2 a.m. for me, which is obviously not going to work. So I will obviously be getting into my rankings now and talking about some fantasy stuff. So next time I hop on here, it will be to talk about fantasy rankings. Once the draft's over, I'll go through each of the positions and talking about where I see the rookies fit for Dynasty, and also a little bit of talk for redraft as well. I'm going to be doing a lot more video stuff now. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. So if you miss a live stream, you can always go and watch it on the YouTube. Obviously, also follow us on Twitter/X, and also follow us on Instagram at the Fantasy First Down. Hope you enjoy the rest of the drafts.